You want to tell the story about the drunk guy that hit you with the bear spray? Because I thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah, I was taking kind of a scenic route. Let's see. Yeah, when you start from the Lake Louise area there at the trailhead that's mentioned in the video. Yeah, I spent my first night at that first campsite there, and then on the second day, I'd heard about a really nice alternate route called Packers Pass, which angles towards the lodge. That is another really popular destination for people that want to go horseback and have maybe a more comfortable backcountry experience in that way. So anyway, after circling around this particular trail that started on Packers Pass, I was coming back to join up with the main trail, and I came across a pair of young guys that were kind of cutting loose. I think they had a bottle of wild turkey or something. And yeah, they were offering me some. I mean, they were nice enough, generous, wanting to share, but that's not something that I partake in, like off the trail or on the trail. So, I politely declined. And then later on in our conversation, I guess they had lost the safety off of their bear spray. So he was reaching into his pocket or something and accidentally, fired off the intense pepper spray that is
Ouch.
bear spray. Yeah, yeah, and I guess the wind was right for it to blow just a little bit in my face. And yeah, fortunately, I had my sunglasses on. It probably would have been more painful without the sunglasses, but yeah, I was able to feel it a little more like when I was sweating later in the day, but nothing that really cramped my style. Um, but yeah,
For,
it's just a good lesson to make sure you don't lose your safety and make sure that the safety's on when it should be on, and I guess off when it should be off. If you ever have to use a product like that.
man, so did you see any bears when you were hiking the Sawback?
That was actually my first time ever seeing grizzlies outside the comfort of like a bus. My uncle and I saw one in Glacier from the shuttle bus. Yeah, that's not the same as being solo in the backcountry and then seeing a grizzly there. In this case, she had a couple of cubs with her also. And this had happened in an area that I had heard was having the grizzly activity. I think it's called Baker Lake. I had just started playing music out of my phone as a sort of security device. I wouldn't ordinarily do that because it's kind of rude, to be blasting music in the backcountry. But in this case, as a solo hiker, I just wanted to give the bear some extra warning, right? And it wasn't more than 10 minutes after I started doing that sure enough, I saw a grizzly bear head, looking at me from, it was a safe distance away. I was never really felt in danger, really. But yeah, it was a good 100 yards off, at least, I guess. And it was obviously a grizzly face. So that's when I got out my monopod and set up my filming equipment, and was able to get some decent video. Not the best we've ever seen, but it was definitely exciting to capture that moment, no doubt.
Yeah, it's coming back to me now because you had some phenomenal video of the grizzly, which I actually asked you how you filmed it because I was so curious, which you generously shared me the technique, which I can put a link to. I think you called it the Ken Burns effect, right? But now I recall your great video of the bears. I mean, how are the insects? Because I go to Canada every summer, and if we're there up in pretty much June, July, August, the insect can be pretty brutal. How are they for your hike?
For this hike, it wasn't really an issue. I think it was cold enough overnight to sort of keep the bugs at bay. I can't really remember that being an issue. I don't know how much the smoke. Do you think the smoke affects the bugs at all?
I would definitely think that would have an impact. I'd be surprised if it didn't actually. So that may have helped you a lot. But you were there kind of
Yeah.
later in the season. You were late August, early September, right?
Yeah, and I think I mentioned this in the video, something to the effect of, well, maybe, this late in August it's a less popular time for at least Canadian backpackers to want to go and take on that might have been a factor in the lesser crowds that I enjoyed, or,
I mean,
or the less competition for permits.
you think the Sawback is just not that well known? Because until I saw your video, I'd never heard of it. So, I mean, you think it's possible
Mhm.
people just don't know about it that much?
Well, it's definitely something that's recommended on their website, and that's how I originally found out about it. I was looking for an alternative to some of the more popular options that are on the south side of the Trans-Canada Highway. I know that that there's the Mount Assiniboine area, which was my first trip in the Canadian Rockies. That was really fantastic. So that's another desirable area that's in higher demand, but that was actually closed last year due to some wildfire issues with Kootenai Provincial Park there that goes through there. Does that answer your question? Sorry, I lost track of the question.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I actually have a better question for you. What did you enjoy most about the Sawback Trail?
Well, certainly the two passes. The Mystic Pass was the second one. And the first pass along that route, can't remember now what the name of that is off the top of my head. I know it was between the Johnston Creek area and the Wildflower campground area. There's two different passes that have the exceptional views with some alpine lakes nearby, especially if you take the spur trail that goes up to Mystic Lake, where I actually was the spot where I found the berries. Just east of Mystic Pass, there's that short side trail that I could definitely recommend. There's no camping there. That's worth mentioning too, actually, in grizzly country, within, a provincial or a national park. There's a reason why they have designated camping areas, right? Where typically, there's a limited number of campsites. And then the food storage, there's special rules around that, whether there's a bear box or whether you have to hang it from a tree branch or a bear pole. There's good reason for that, just because the Park Service wants to just be safe and make sure that those food smells are just being confined to those smaller areas, right? As opposed to the open sort of dispersed camping that we would enjoy at places like Yosemite and many others. And with that comes the nice benefit, especially as a solo backpacker, of meeting people at the campsite, because when there's just the one sort of shared dining area, typically you end up meeting other backpackers, unless you have the campsite all to yourself, which was the case for me on the last couple nights, and that might have been an effect of the heavier wildfire smoke, or maybe just, I don't know, something with the weather forecast. I'm not sure. I guess people could bail on their permits after booking out those sites, but who knows? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a similar experience to the Appalachian Trail with just a lot less people, right? Where you can meet people at the campsites, which, especially if you're solo, that's got to add a lot to your experience. Hey, so do you have any? I mean, if there were a few takeaways, maybe a one or two or three suggestions you could give anybody that is thinking about the Sawback Trail. I mean, it sounds like the
Let's
permitting,
see.
the permitting, it sounds like you definitely need to get ahead of. Is that correct?
Well, I mean, I showed up just, I think, 3 or 4 days before I wanted to enter in. The ranger for this computer system was able to set me up pretty well. Yeah, definitely you want to have your permit in hand before you go. And it might be different if you go in July or June. I mean, as far as advice for sawback hikers, I would say, bring your bear spray. And preferably, don't go solo. I mean, it's not recommended that people go out solo in grizzly country like that, because you are putting yourself at greater risk typically. Obviously, I was taking a risk there myself, but felt confident enough in my abilities that I would be fine with it.
Yeah, but you had your music speaker with you, so you're blasting music. So that's like having another person talking to you, right?
I guess so. Yeah. I mean,
I'm just
yeah,
kidding, man.
yeah. That's a fair point. But as far as like groups versus solo, I remember hearing some statistic, at least at one of the Canadian parks, where like bears have never attacked a group of 4 people or more, and then
Yeah.
um,
Strength in
stick
numbers.
the numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you increase your chances of getting attacked if you have 3, 2, or I guess most 1. But they're also very good up in Canada about having seasonal closures in areas where they know that there's going to be grizzlies, and they do this at Glacier too. I mean, the first year that I went to Glacier with my uncle, that 50 Mountain campground had been closed for a good month or more because of grizzly activity, and then fortunately for us, it was able to open back up just a few days before we went on our trip. I'll never forget, one of the guys there at the 50 Mountain campground had a full-on an electric fence around his tent. Typical, nylon backpacking tent.
That's funny.
He had packed in like a 70,000 watt volt or whatever, 70,000 volt, whatever fence and strung it up around his.
Well, I don't think
Yeah,
you
right.
should be. I don't think you should be overly concerned, Amos, because you're a professional chef, which means you've got all these extra ingredients that probably make you smell especially good to a grizzly bear, right?
Maybe. I mean, I'm pretty good about hanging my food as well. I'm pretty well practiced, even in areas where I don't really have to hang my food. I guess it becomes more of a rodent hang in those situations. I do like to put together my own dehydrated meals. Some of the ingredients I will purchase outright. I think the vegetables are typically the thing that's hardest to come by in the backcountry. So that's something that if you don't want to dehydrate them yourself, I mean, it's certainly easy enough to order those off Amazon, whatever type of dehydrated vegetables you would want to have in your meals.
Hey, so let's talk about your food for a second because you sent me a link and my daughter and I watched your the way you prepare your food, and that it was really interesting, right? Because um, I mean, there were a lot of ingredients you put in there that I was not familiar with. Do you want to
Yeah.
talk about your go-to backcountry meal, and then some of the specialty meals that you create for your trips?
Sure, yeah. Well, I kind of rotate between a variety of vegetables. So basically, there's like the vegetable component or the fruit component. So if it's a breakfast, like a cereal type of thing, like a hot cereal. And then there's the starch, and then there's the protein, which is typically, I'll tear up some beef jerky or whatever other type of jerky, or even use some textured vegetable protein. Yeah, along with that, I mean, the starch could be, of course, you're probably familiar with the powdered mashed potatoes. I think that's a common staple amongst backpackers. But
Oh, it's
as well,
so
right?
easy, right? So easy to cook.
Absolutely, and the same can be said for couscous as well. And then I'll mix that up with. I've gone through the trouble to dehydrate cooked rice that doesn't rehydrate quite as easily as the powdered mashed potatoes or the couscous, but I found still works pretty well, especially if you could give it a little extra time to to absorb that water. I've gone through some of the extra effort to dehydrate my proteins as well as my vegetables on my own. Sometimes it just depends kind of on what I have in the fridge. I've even gone and dehydrated like leftover lentil soup till it gets down to like little crumbly bits, that I can rehydrate easily enough. Um, so yeah, it really varies quite a bit. I mean, I do like my curry powder and my powdered coconut cream and powdered like dairy cream. I mean, as we know, as backpackers, it's a good thing to be able to get more value there as far as calories per ounce. So I find that the powdered cream, whether it be coconut or dairy, really helps with that. There's dehydrated cheese products that work pretty well also. Maybe you've seen the Parmesan crisp type things that are available at some grocery stores, like especially the Kroger, or what is the Utah version of Kroger, carry ingredients like that work out real well for backpacking. So it's kind of a mashup of different things.
One thing
And
I'm sure about, Amos, is that you're eating better than me in the backcountry. That is the one takeaway that I'm getting here, for sure.
well, if we ever get to go backpacking together, I'd be happy to share with you. I mean, it's still dehydrated, so those that I guess haven't been initiated into that sort of eating, it's still dehydrated food, but yeah, I mean, I like to have that control. And let's face it, if you're buying the Mountain House or the Backpacker's Pantry, I mean, the cost adds up, right? I mean, obviously, I'm
Yeah.
spending, I can spend a fair bit of time putting my own meals together. So I guess it just depends upon how much time one has to really spend on that type of stuff. And yeah, obviously, those other options are convenient.
Amos, do you have any tips for novices? Somebody that has never kind of prepared a backcountry meal. Maybe they just go grab a mountain house, or maybe they just go and grab one of those little prepackaged chickens from Kroger or one of the grocery stores. Do you have any tips for them?
Well, one tip that I thought was worth even making a video for was with eggs on the backcountry. Both my buddy Anthony and I that I was hiking, both of us enjoyed eggs. So what we would do in the trail towns, I think we would go and split a 12-pack, or there was even a couple little like farm stands. I think there was one of them was in Massachusetts, if I remember correctly, and that would sell like duck eggs or fresh chicken eggs or something like that. And something I got into was, even with my jet boil, which granted is not ideal for hard boiling eggs, right? But of course I could boil those eggs in the trail towns as well. If I wanted to, I could, and I did yesterday actually for breakfast. I hard boiled a couple eggs, and I guess in a conventional sort of jet boil, you can fit as many as like 4 or maybe more at a time. And you kind of got to keep topping off the water because it boils off. Because let's face it, there's only, at least my old school jet boil, it's only like 2 settings, like 0 or 100%, right?
Extreme heat, right?
Yeah, it's just like nothing or full blast. I've taken hard boiled eggs, and like any grocery store will have like those little mayonnaise and mustard packets. So what I got into is I made egg salad on the trail with those mayonnaise and mustard packets that'll be available at most any grocery store, and maybe add some salt and pepper on top of that. So that's, I guess, a simple sort of pointer that I can give for people that enjoy eggs, you know.
Yeah, no, that's. I mean, that's a good one because I think a lot of people are always looking for, better ways to take food into the wilderness, especially that's lightweight. Hey, so on the topic of taking things into the wilderness, I love to ask this question to all the people I speak with. Do you have like, if you had to give me your top 5 most cherished pieces of backpacking gear, or just things you take in the wilderness, what would
Oh,
they be?
sure. Let's see. Well, I mean, up until recently, I can say that the Manfrotto off-road walking stick was
Oh, hmm,
one of my favorite pieces of gear, and that
interesting.
one, yeah, well, it was a walking stick. I think I read about it initially in Backpacker magazine,
Okay.
and anyway, it's made by, or it was made by a company that makes photography gear, right? They're not really in the business of selling hiking poles, but this was kind of their venture into that. These lightweight poles that are less than a pound, like together, right? So nice and light. And then one of the poles had a camera mount on the top of one of the handle, of one of the poles. So with that, yeah, that was my main hiking pole slash monopod for a couple of years there. Unfortunately, that set of poles finally met its demise this past April. I gave it a bit of a beating on a particular hike I was enjoying, and then as it so happens, they don't make this product anymore. But I'm hoping some other company might step up and incorporate a camera mount into their hiking poles, because I really enjoy the concept. I think I was able to get a lot out of it, even if these poles were more fragile with their lightweight aluminum or whatever they were made out of.
No gear lasts forever. That's for certain.
And trust me, I had it splinted up with a stick and duct tape, to get me through the rest of that trip. But yeah, it had a good run. I had probably, more miles than it was designed to handle, that I put on
Do,
those. But
do you have
go ahead.
anything else that you're particularly attached to? Because I definitely have my sort of top 5 pieces of gear. I'm always curious to hear what other people have to say there.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, my tent that I mentioned earlier, the REI Quarter Dome, has been treating me right. Even though,
All
I mean,
right.
all along the AT. I mean, there's a reason why that's a popular tent for through hikers, is my understanding as well.
I have
And
one. I just want to go on record. I'm a fan and I do own one. So well
nice.
stated. Well stated.
Even though one of the zippers is worn out, and I probably should get a replacement, yeah, it's still treating me well. The see what else? I mean, my iPhone is what I've done the vast majority of my filming on. That said, I do have a Canon little camcorder. My last few trips, I've been able to sort of upgrade my video quality with that Canon Vixia HFR 800. If anybody's taking notes, it's only about 8 ounces. So granted, that's double the weight of the smaller iPhone 6 that I carry, but the zoom is vastly superior. Certainly a nicer, sharper resolution. Certainly the iPhone it's a multi-use tool, right? Whether it be filming or taking pictures or listening to podcasts or using the other various bells and whistles that are there. The ebooks, having an ebook instead of carrying a book, I can read a book off of that's been downloaded to my phone.
Amos, I got to ask you, how do you keep that charged though? right? If you're out there for 5 days, you're reading books, you're listening to podcasts, you're taking pictures. You must have a secret trick to keeping that thing charged.
Indeed. Well, it's not so secret. I've actually got a video. My next video that's going to be publishing here shortly is my review of the solar panel that I was carrying all along that Sawback
Ah,
Trail. So I think
there it
you'll,
is.
I think, yeah, when that posts this Sunday, and we're speaking actually on the summer solstice. Happy solstice, by the way.
Oh,
Um,
thank you.
yeah, so coming up this weekend, I'll be publishing that to my channel, so you can get some more details about that. But that said, I've actually made some changes to my gear since then. I've actually got an Anchor Power Source 10,000 or something like that, and it can recharge a phone, I think, 5 or 6 times.
Wow.
It's not the lightest piece of gear. I think it does weigh like about a pound or so. But
Yeah.
yeah, at least with that, I don't have to be depending, or I don't have to be relying on there being sunshine. And you'll see it in the review. But one of the drawbacks about the solar panel that I was carrying on the Sawback Trail there was that 14-ounce solar panel does not include the battery. So I had to carry a separate little battery. The logistics of that could be kind of a hassle. Of course, now, if I wanted to, I could pair that Anchor battery, that holds 5 or 6 charges of an iPhone, with the solar panel, and then, probably have a much easier time with things if I wanted to carry a 2-pound charging combo there. But
Yeah.
so yeah,
That's a great tip. I will definitely be watching your video on that one.
excellent. Yeah, I hope you like it. With that type of device for a solar panel, I mean, it's really only helpful in an area where it's going to be getting sun, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, in the south where we live, we got a lot of tree cover, which is kind of tougher. But where you guys are in Utah, you're probably getting a lot more sunlight than we are when you're on the trail. Hey, so let me ask you, Amos, if you've obviously done a ton of hiking. One of the questions I
Uh-huh.
always like to ask is, if you had a week or if you had a long weekend, let's call it a 3 or 4 day weekend, what kind of trips would you recommend? What would you suggest to the people that are listening?
Well, let's see. I mean, as far as places that I've been, yeah, I mean, I could recommend the Chesler Park here in the Canyonlands, not too far from here. Being that it's a national park, it is a situation where, yeah, I think the permits actually book out pretty far in advance these days.
Yeah,
Um,
it's Utah,
uh,
Utah for the listeners, right?
yeah, indeed, it's really the most popular backpacking area of the Canyonlands, and there's good reason for that. Yeah, there's a lot of nice little features, just tremendous red rock canyon country scenery going on there. And
Oh
there's
yeah.
a water source within walking distance on the way to Druid Arch and various other features. The Dark Canyon Wilderness, could definitely
Wow.
recommend that as well. That
You know,
that one's go ahead.
I was gonna say it's another one that I've never heard about. That's why I always ask these questions, right? So another one that I knew nothing about. So please tell me more.
Yeah, the Dark Canyon Wilderness. I'll send you a link later on, Birdshooter. I can say that that's one of the video series I'm more proud of, the way I was able to put that together. That was actually, believe it or not, a winter trip in mid-March of
Awesome.
2017.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
I was able to spend 2 nights starting from what's called the Sundance Trailhead, and this actually overlaps with a longer trail. Maybe you've heard of the Hayduke Trail.
Yeah. Well,
And
so wait, is
um,
is the Sundance Trailhead near Sundance, Utah?
no, actually, that can be confusing. I'm not sure why they call it the Sundance Trailhead, but it's down there, really quite remote. It's one of the more remote trailheads that is, yeah, well south of a place called Hanksville, which is really the last town you drive through before getting into that part of Utah that's kind of down towards the Henry Mountains and Lake Powell and Glen Canyon Wilderness. The beauty of this particular hike, starting from the Sundance Trailhead, is that at least the way that I did it, I took 2 nights of sort of a base camp there. You walk down into the canyon. It does take some getting used to, because those that are doing mountain hikes, right, you hike uphill first and then you camp, or typically, right? Then you hike downhill back to the car. But it's reverse, right, going into a canyon. So it's a different type of a hike in that sense for those of you that are used to the sort of alpine lakes or just straight mountain, type hiking.
Right.
Yeah, the scenery is really special. I remember I was able to spot some fossils, and this is probably not a fair comparison. I don't have a lot of experience with the Grand Canyon. Well, it reminded me of the Grand Canyon, but there was nobody there, type of thing. I saw the one Hayduke thru hiker there, and otherwise, I didn't see anybody there in the 2 nights I was there. And during that sort of 0 day, between the 2 nights, I was able to walk all the way down to the Colorado River and back. That particular part of Dark Canyon Wilderness is close enough that one can go and do that. So that was pretty special. And go ahead.
I was just going to say, I haven't hiked a ton in Utah, so I'm very interested in, getting your opinion on these areas.
Another nice spot in Dark Canyon that I really enjoyed, it's sort of the next set of videos that I'm working on actually, is a longer trip in the Dark Canyon Wilderness that's actually a loop that goes over 3 or 4 nights. I think it's 42 miles. And basically you start from a place called the Wooden Shoe Trailhead. Then you come out the other side. Yeah, you basically hike down one tributary canyon that's eventually feeds into the main Dark Canyon, and then you hike up Dark Canyon, then back out in kind of like a horseshoe shape. You actually drive through the Bears Ears buttes there. There's a road that cuts like right between the ears to access that area. So that was a pretty special one for me too. There were a few other people that I saw there. If you're talking about trips that are 3 or 4 nights, that would be one that I can recommend as well for those of you that are into desert hikes. The water can be a bit iffy, but there's some arches along the way and even some Anasazi ancestral
ruins.
wetland ruins.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, of ancient people that used to live there. So another good sort of off the radar spot, compared to the other national parks of Utah that can be pretty crowded, these days in this day and age.
Yeah. Hey man, so the listeners, how can they keep up with your travels on the trail? Do you want to plug your YouTube channel? And you probably have other ways too, right? Because you've got some great material if someone's looking for some hikes they may not have thought of. And I think the Sawback, which we talked about earlier, is a great example.
Indeed. Well, certainly Backpacker Diaries, 2 words, is an easy way to find me on YouTube, what I've been up to. And then also, if you want to see what I've been up to more recently and you have a Facebook account, there's a Facebook group of the same name where if you want to, you can see what I was up to this week and last week, because that's a faster sort of platform where I can, share photos without all that production that's involved. I mean, admittedly, I'm about, I think, 8 months behind on, I'm working through what I did like last fall at this point, as far as the videos go. For more up-to-date sort of action, the group on Facebook called Backpacker Diaries is another thing that I can recommend there.
I'm going to it right now and clicking the follow button here, so I gotcha.
Cool.
And I also appreciate, Amos, as well, that it takes a lot of time to produce those videos, so I can understand how you would get a little behind trying to keep up with them. That makes complete sense to me. It's a lot of work.
Yeah, you know how it goes from producing podcasts. So, it
Yes.
takes some time to edit and mix. For any of you that go back and watch my older videos, there's definitely a progression in quality there. It started out pretty rough, but like anything, more practice makes a better product. So that's something that's rewarding to me when I go back and look at it, to see, I guess, how it's getting better. And so I just wanted to point that out too, that some of my older videos are kind of, rougher quality.
It's part of the process. If you go back and listen to the early versions of my podcast, I'm sure it's no different.
Yeah.
So, you grow in what you do. That's part of experience. So, Amos, great to talk to you. I mean, I've really enjoyed watching your videos. If you ever get to the East Coast, man, definitely look me up. And I'll look forward to the next release. Hopefully we can talk again here sometime soon, if not hike together.
I hope so, Birdshooter. I had a great time, and I was honored to be a part of it.
All right. Well, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you, Birdshooter.
Thank you for listening to the n2Backpacking podcast. This is your host, Birdshooter, wishing you the best for your travels on the trail. To subscribe to this show, visit iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or your favorite podcast app, and give us a thumbs up or a positive comment while you're there. You can also download shows directly from n2Backpacking.com. Just click the podcast tab on the main menu. Music for this show was provided by Jeris under a Creative Commons license and is titled Hillbilly Anarchy. This show is a production of n2Backpacking and is copyrighted by N2 Ventures, Inc. For more information on this podcast or to provide feedback or comments on this or future shows, please visit us at n2Backpacking.com. That's the letter N, the number 2, backpacking.com.